guys, welcome to this week's demo. A little later than I had originally planned, but sometimes I get busy and it comes around a little bit later than planning. But that's okay. That's just the way that life goes. All right, so this week I wanted to give you some ideas for using the Karin brush markers. So they are, the brand Karin is K-R-I-N, and it's called a Brushmarker Pro. It is one of my all-time favorite pens. I've been having so much fun with these. Taylor and I were visiting Wenatchee, where we're from, a little while ago. It's probably a couple months ago now. And while we were there, there was a little stationery shop in town, and I wanted to check. Well, Taylor actually saw it first, and he was like, "Let's go check it out." So I wanted to go in and just kind of see what they had to offer. And I asked them about brush pens, and she said this is the best brush pen ever. She actually teaches classes in it, and so I picked them up, started playing, had so much fun. So I wanted to share ideas with you today on how to use those. Okay. All right, so let's get started here. All right, so it's a traditional brush pen. So what that means is that you have, with a light hand, you can kind of get a nice fine point lined. And then with a heavy hand, you can get these really beautiful thick lines, and it can kind of lend itself to making kind of beautiful handwriting. And even if you are not very skilled in calligraphy, which I am not, you can still make beautiful writing. I've taught you this technique before, but in case you don't remember or haven't seen it, the brush tip you can do a lot of things with. I used to be a professional face painter, and in doing face painting, I learned a lot about creating little embellishments and little things that you can add to make your lettering and just your creations a lot more fun. So this is called a splash mark, where it kind of looks like a splash. So you have these larger splashes and then all the way down to these tiny little ones, which is just, it just adds so much to a card or to your writing. Also, you can use the tip to make these cute little hearts, which I also really love to do. Again, it's really easy to create and doesn't take very much effort. So it's just really fun. Again, just a little extra thing that you can do to use your brush pen in a fun new way. So that is the traditional way that I personally like to use brush pens, okay? All right, now let's talk about the other stuff. So you can actually, with your brush pens, if you actually have ones, you have like a light color and a dark color, you can actually create some really cool things. So you can take your dark color, and traditionally I would not really recommend doing this with a felt tip pen like these, but you actually are going to color directly onto the tip of the pen, onto the lighter color with the darker color. And when you do that, you can actually create this beautiful ombre effect. And I don't know if you guys can actually see that. I'm actually going to color a little bit more on here so I can make it a little bit more dramatic looking. Isn't that amazing? You can see here the dark to the light. It's so, so, so cool. And so I like to do that, especially if I'm doing like lettering or I want to just like make something look like even more fun. I love to do it and then create these fun little splash marks like I was doing earlier. Okay, but I just love that look of that kind of ombre style. And I love when you have the ink on there that actually, if you have quite a bit of ink onto the tip of that, you get the ombre that lasts a little bit longer. So you can see here how it faded out pretty quickly, but here the ombre lasted a little bit longer, and same here. But I just love the look of the splash mark here with that beautiful tone on tone. It's so, so cool. Okay, so once you have created, kind of played with that kind of concept, you can even, on a piece of acetate, this is a piece of plastic here, okay, on a piece of acetate, you can actually color onto the piece of acetate with your pens. And this is really great if you're like wanting to do like maybe watercolors on the go, because then you can get your nice watercolor palette down and you just scribble the markers out onto the piece of plastic, and then you can use a water brush. And a water brush is great because you can actually just go in and just pick up the colors or mix colors, and then you can get that nice color, and you can actually do watercolors on your paper, which is also really, really cool. So it's just a nice way to use your pens in a new and different way, because this ink is not waterproof. It makes it so that you can actually do watercolors, and then let's say that you laid it down and you messed up or you wanted to add more color in, you can always go back in and move the watercolors around or do blending and different things like that. So just wanted to make sure that you were well aware about what all of your options are for using the pens, you know, just for doing lettering or doing watercolors. And those are the things that I tend to use the most with my brush pens, okay? So I've actually had some people ask me, well, what are the differences between the Karin brush markers and the Tombos? So Tombos are these pens, and I love Tombos. I've used them for years. The Tombow pens actually have a bullet point on one end and a brush tip on the other end. And so these are nice for a variety of different reasons. And like I said, I used these pens for years until I recently discovered the Karin brush markers. And I'm going to show you why I love these ones even more than the other ones. Okay. All right, so let's say that you are wanting to do some coloring here. So let me pull this out real fast. Okay, so I drew a little flower design here, and what I'm going to do is I want to actually create kind of an ombre kind of a look. Okay, so we're just going to go on here, and I'm just going to color my flower in. I guess it could be a sunflower if I wanted it to be. Oh, the other thing I like about the Karin brush markers versus the Tombos is that the brush tip itself actually is very firm, so it holds up really nicely over time. I have found that with the Tombos over time that the brush tip starts to kind of splay out or starts to get kind of fuzzy, and so you don't get a nice crisp edge. But these ones, I've been using these a lot, and the brush tip holds up very, very nicely. So I've been really, really impressed with that. Okay, so I've laid this down. I'm feeling really good about the color. It's really nice and vibrant. It's absolutely gorgeous. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in here and I'm actually going to color my right onto the yellow here. And I'm going to get, this is the red going on to the yellow. Again, normally with a normal felt tip I would not recommend doing this, but these pens are actually what they refer to as self-cleaning. I don't know if you can see, but there's actually liquid in here in the pen itself. You see how there's that bubble moving around? This is actually liquid and it's actually dyeing the little brush tip. Because this pen is self-cleaning, that means that over time that it's going to clean itself, and so this red on here is eventually just going to brush right off, which is why you can put the color directly on the tip without damaging the pen itself, because it is self-cleaning. Okay, right now I know that my color is really vibrant, so I'm going to start with the very tip here. And I don't know if you guys can see this, but it's starting to turn more orange, and then it's eventually going to get even lighter in color. So I'm thinking about my light source, where my light is going to be coming in. So I'm going to kind of try and replicate that. So then that way it's really light up here and really dark down here. Okay. So now that I'm kind of getting kind of closer to the bright yellow color that I was normally at, now I can kind of go in here and I'm just going to start kind of blending this out a little bit, moving towards my yellow. Okay. All right. So now I can blend that nicely, and so I get that really beautiful kind of color. All right, and I'm going to do the same thing again here. Color my red directly onto my yellow. And then I'm going to take that bright red, I'm going to bring it down here, and down here, and down here. We'll do here, and here. And then since now it's having a little bit more orange on here, I can blend this right directly into my yellow. So you can really have like this really interesting amount of control over that kind of beautiful kind of ombre effect that is happening here. Oh, and I see right here, I can still see some of my orangey kind of lines here. So I'm going to use part of my pen that has a little bit more orange on it still, or more of that red. Okay, and then we're just going to do one more time. Don't need to do as much that time because I only have this one little area. Kind of pulling some of that color in on my shadow side. All right. So there we have that kind of idea here, and I'm actually going to go in Oh, I think now actually I'm going to add a little bit of brown. So I'm mixing kind of brown and yellow together. So you kind of get this really interesting kind of ombre effect, right, that we were talking about earlier. I'm just going to go in here right around the edge of my center of my, I guess we're making a sunflower here. And as I move closer and closer to my light source, right, see how it's lighter on this side and darker on this side? Okay, so as I'm doing that, the brown is kind of actually coming off of the pen a little bit, making it so that I can actually kind of create this kind of light area here, and then again, this kind of darker area down there, okay? And then, let's see, got a little bit of this color kind of left on here, so I'm just gonna kind of dab in some of this bright yellow here, and then I'm gonna add a little bit more brown. We'll kind of do, oops, some kind of brown in here. Just kind of a touch of that. And then we'll go in and add some kind of darker kind of brown in some of this area down here. Again, my shadows are kind of down on this part of this. My darker shadows here. Okay. We'll add some yellow in there. So that is the idea for coloring with these markers. So you can create a really beautiful color, and then it has that beautiful kind of ombre effect that's kind of happening, because as the color kind of comes off of the pen, you're able to actually control that shadow kind of effect, which I really, really love. I just think that that's so, so, so cool. So that's kind of the idea for using that duo tip, or using that dyeing the tip of the pen idea for doing coloring with your art. So just wanted to kind of inspire you and kind of put that seed in your brain, because there's a lot that you can do. Normally with a Tombow pen, you would not be able to do this, because again, then you would end up dyeing the tip of the marker, and of course the brush tip itself doesn't really hold up very well for doing this kind of creating this kind of design and effect. Okay. All right, so for this next technique, what I want to do is I actually want to do some different watercoloring techniques using these markers. So what we're going to do is I'm going to use a piece of 300-gram series of the watercolor paper, so it's nice and thick, okay? And it's going to make it so we can actually float our water onto the paper. So I'm going to show you, this is kind of an interesting technique. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to squirt out quite a bit of water here onto my paper itself. And I'm actually just going to kind of create, I know you can't really see this very well, but I'm actually using water to kind of create just like a watercolor shape of a flower here. Again, I have water floating right on the surface here. So then what you can do is you can actually take one of your markers and actually dye the color directly into the water, and it floats, which is really, really cool. And it doesn't damage the brush tip itself because the brush tip is so firm. So you can actually go in here and actually dye the water, which is just kind of a really interesting technique. Again, I floated quite a bit of water on the surface here to be able to do this. But you can see the effect is actually really fascinating. So I had a lot of fun kind of exploring and kind of experimenting with that kind of concept. And I know you guys can't see it super well, but it's just really interesting how when the water is wet, how you can actually just dye that water, and then you can actually go in and do watercolors and kind of move that ink around quite a bit. So I had a lot of fun kind of exploring that kind of idea. So once you have your color down, then you can go in and add some, more details in your watercolor. So we're just going to fill this in. And then, once it kind of starts to dry a little bit, then we can go back in and we can add some more detail in here. So I'm just going to kind of take my marker in here and kind of add some more kind of lines and things, some more details, some cute little swirls and such. Just to kind of create some more like definition in here. Just really love how that kind of comes together. And I'm going to go in and bring in some dark blue. And the watercolor paper is pretty forgiving, so then that way you can actually, you know, do some stuff, let it dry, then go back and add more detail, and then let it dry, and then add some water to move your colors around and let it dry. So you have, like I said, quite a few options for creating these really beautiful floral designs and these really amazing images here. I'm adding just a touch of brown in here, just to kind of give some more definition in there. And we'll go back in with a bit more purple. And you can see how the marker is still in great condition, even though we did touch it on the edge of that water there. You're still able to go in and add all these little fun details. So I thought that was really fun and really fun to play with. And now that I'm seeing from a distance that my colors are not as vibrant as I may have wanted, I can actually go in here, float some more water if I wanted to, and add some more color in there, which I think I am going to do. In here, and I'll activate that and then bring my colors in a little bit more here. Okay, so just other ideas for you, just for using your Karin brush markers in a new and different way, which I really... So something else that I really love about these brush markers is that if you're working with a piece of star dream paper, and this is a paper that has a coating on it, it's a little bit metallic. I found this out actually because I was waiting for something to dry, and I discovered that you can actually heat emboss your pens, which I thought was really, really, really cool. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to write like a cute little message. Hello, friend. And I'm just going to do a quick little flower here. And we'll make that a little bit pink flower. And because the inks are staying wet longer, we actually have a little bit more work time than we normally would. And I'm just going to quickly just watercolor those just to blend my colors together. Oh, I still have a bit of purple on my pen, I'm realizing. That's okay. Alright, create some little splash marks there. Okay, and then I might as well create a little stem here. Alright, so this paper, like I was telling you, has a coating on it, which means that the ink takes forever to dry, which is actually great if you happen to have clear embossing powder. So, this is my clear embossing powder. What I'm going to do here is I'm just going to run this through my embossing powder. And then that ink is sticking to, or that powder is going to be sticking to my ink that's all still very wet. Because again, it takes forever for it to dry. So then we can take our heat gun here and we can heat set it. And watch what happens. Isn't that so cool? The colors are now even more vibrant than they were before. And they're embossed, which is so fun. So you get, now your colors are even more vibrant, but because they've been heat embossed, one, they're raised up, which is really cool, but two, it's now also completely waterproof, because once you've done the heat embossing, because the embossing powder is actually a powdered resin, and so when it sticks to this, it becomes glossy, but also, like I said, completely waterproof. So that means that even though normally that ink would have moved with water, now it won't move with water at all. So we can actually go in and actually do coloring right on top of this, and the lines aren't going to go anywhere. See, all of that is completely waterproof and it's staying just the way that it is. Isn't that so fun? Oh my gosh, I just love it. So I can actually go around this edge here. I should probably be working on my craft mat, but I'm not. So I'm going to do it on here. Oops. I know, You may be thinking, Ellie, what are you doing? What is your plan here? But trust me, I do have a plan. Okay, so I want to do that, and then I'm also going to put a little bit of green right onto my yellow. So then that way I kind of get my in-between coloring here. And also, because this is going to activate the green, I can just color directly on there, and it's actually going to move that green for me. Okay. All right, and now, wipe that off a little bit. Now I can go in with my water brush. Oh, I just need to grab my I'm going to take my water brush and actually do a wash across the entire page here. Okay, kind of creating a fun little scene here. And I'm going to go in with just my yellow and move my yellow around. So it's nice and beautiful. And then my green, I'll move my green around. And back to my yellow. Okay. All right. I'm going to clean up my letters just a little bit so that there's no color on my flower or my letters. Dab those out a little bit. All right. And then, since we did watercolors, chances are that some of this may not be totally dry yet because it takes forever for this ink to dry on this paper. Not a problem, because now we can go back in and heat set the whole thing again with the embossing powder. So we're going to create this whole thing, make it completely embossed. And check out how fun that's going to be. So even though we've already embossed one time, you can still emboss that entire image again, no problem. And it's not going to do anything to that image. And watch what happens. So now the entire image has been completely heat embossed, and so now it's extremely vibrant, absolutely beautiful. Not just that, but it's also totally waterproof. So if you had done like anything else on top, you could absolutely do that. Oh, I got a little fiber got stuck in there from something or other. But that is one of my favorite things to use these pens for, is using it on the Star Dream papers, because the inks are staying wet longer, that you can actually do more with them. Whereas a Tombow marker is going to dry not as quickly, but it's going to eventually dry on the Star Dream paper and onto those. So yeah, I thought that was kind of a fun way to use these pens in a new and different way. So along that same kind of lines, you can actually do some really cool watercolors on the Star Dream papers as well, because you can actually blend and control those quite a bit more. So I'm going to go ahead and draw another flower here. So we're just gonna kind of stick with my same kind of shape that same kind of shape that I'm comfortable with. Oh, my flower petals are going to be a lot larger than I had anticipated, but that's okay. All right. So we'll color that down, and then we'll do some in the middle here. And then I want this to be kind of a purpley kind of flower. So normally when I'm blending on just normal paper, I want to do that tone on tone that I was showing you earlier, where I'm blending it out. But in this case, because the colors are going to be wetter longer, I can actually blend them right out into each other, and they work beautifully together. So we're just going to do this, and then we're going to take our watercolor, and we're just going to brush that through and just activate all the colors there. Isn't that beautiful? Oh my gosh. Look at those gorgeous colors. Just absolutely love that. And whenever I'm doing this, I always work light to dark. Alright, this beautiful coloring here. Oh goodness. That motorcycle starting out there scared me. I wasn't expecting that. I probably should be expecting it at this point because I hear them all the time. Okay. Alright. So we'll check out how beautiful that is. Whoops. So isn't that fun? So you kind of get some kind of different kind of ideas here for moving your watercolors around, because there is the coating on the paper, so it kind of lends itself to, you know, it can kind of move a little bit more than it would on just like normal paper. Okay. All right. So this will eventually dry, but I am not the kind of person that is super patient. So what we're going to do here, just to kind of get this to move forward, is I'm going to use some clear embossing powder on this again. And I'm going to heat set that one more time. Isn't that so cool? I love how it looks like, you know, painted, but we just used our markers, and then again I just used embossing powder just to kind of heat set that. So using your Star Dream paper to heat set it, you'll kind of create some really cool kind of effects there. Alright, so the last idea I wanted to share with you is if we wanted to create like some fun ombre lettering. So I just wrote out this little word, happy, on the smooth finish paper, the Solar White that I usually use. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick a couple colors, and we're just going to do kind of this kind of ombre kind of lettering style. So my thought with this is that we're actually going to start by coloring, and I'm going to leave this middle section kind of open, so then that way we can go in and add some more color in there with the darker colors. Okay, so I'm just going to do the top and bottom in the lighter color, and we'll just color along here. And then we'll go this way. Alright, and then same thing here. So all of this is going to be the same. So we're just going to blend this one little middle section here. Okay. All the rest of this is going to be pink. All right, and then we'll do the same thing here. Okay, so now what we're going to do here is we're actually going to go in, and I'm going to pick up just a little bit, just a tiny little bit of the purple, and then I'm going to lay down some color right in here. So I'm just picking up a little bit of the color in here as we're just going to kind of blend this out. So then that way what we have here is we have the darker purple is in the middle, and then it's going, as the color comes off of the brush pen, then it's going to head back to the color pink, and so then we're going to fade out into the rest of our pink again. Okay, So we're just gonna lay this down. So I'm laying down the darker color, and then as the color comes off of my brush, it's just gonna automatically head back towards the color pink. So we're trying to match that in between color there. Okay. Right. The dark and our light here. And here. Okay. All right. And I'm just going to go in and fill up here. So all of that is nice and even. Okay. Alright, so there we have our ombre kind of effect that kind of looks that way. So we have that kind of darker center, and then it kind of blends out into that kind of lighter color there. So it's not as easy to see on this one, but I'll show you what I did earlier. And so you can kind of see how you can kind of get that really beautiful kind of ombre effect where you have that kind of green in the center kind of bleeding out into the yellow. So again, just some ideas to just kind of inspire you in hopes that, you know, you can start playing with your markers and have some fun. Enjoy, you guys. Thanks for joining me for today's demo. Or this week's demo, rather. I hope you learned some stuff and got inspired. I'll see you guys soon. Bye-bye!